The school stood like a time-worn giant, looming over the town with its chipped paint and creaky floorboards that whispered secrets of the past. It felt ancient, as if it had seen generations of children come and go, each leaving behind laughter mixed with tears. Some windows were cracked, letting in beams of light that danced and flickered, creating shadows that appeared to stretch out like arms grasping for something long lost. This was not just any school, it had a history, and Lily could feel it everywhere she went. Recently, Lily had moved to the area with her family. They had settled into a cozy little house not too far from the school. From day one, she noticed something strange about the building. It felt as if the walls had ears, listening to every word spoken in the hallways. The students, who had known each other for years, exchanged secrets and glances, but to Lily, they felt distant, as if they belonged to a different world. Despite this, she was not one to back down from a challenge, and her curiosity often led her down paths she didn't expect. As she stepped into the school on her first day, she was met with a series of hushed whispers that slithered through the air. "Have you heard about the haunted bathroom?" One girl giggled nervously. "No one goes in there alone," another warned, taking a step back as if imagining the specter itself lurking behind her. Lily's heart raced at the thought. A haunted bathroom? It sounded like something out of a storybook, yet her adventurous spirit was already urging her to seek it out. One afternoon, when the sun was lazily sinking in the sky and casting long shadows, Lily found herself wandering near the girls' restroom. A chill curled up her spine as she stood before the door. It was not just a restroom, it felt like a gateway into another realm, where time stood still and the air was thick with untold stories. With a firm grip on the handle, she pushed open the door, and a wave of stale air rushed out, wrapping around her like an icy blanket. Inside, the lights flickered overhead, buzzing like angry bees. The mirror lining the wall showed blurry reflections that twisted and warped with the light. Lily stopped in front of it, watching her reflection as it morphed and changed. For a brief moment, she thought she saw something else entirely, a face with hollow eyes staring back at her, mouth open in a silent scream. But when she blinked, it was just her own wide eyes looking back. The moment passed like a shadow. Taking a deep breath, she walked further into the restroom, heading toward the last stall. It had an ominous reputation among students, whispered about like a forbidden secret. They claimed that something dark lurked within, waiting for unsuspecting prey. But Lily wasn't afraid, at least, not yet. As she approached, she noticed the door creaked as she pulled it open. The sound echoed in the silence, as if giving life to the stall itself. As she entered, a horrible stench invaded her nostrils, a rancid smell that churned her stomach. It was like something had died there long ago, and the memories of that long-past moment clung to the air. The stall was nearly empty, except for a single toilet roll sitting almost precariously on the holder. It spun in an unsettling hue of red that made her heart race even faster. She gasped when she noticed a note taped to the wall, waving slightly as though it were alive, a warning in jagged letters. "Choose red or blue," it read, "but beware the cloak." Her breath caught in her throat, a chill creeping down her spine as she read the shaky handwriting over and over again. What kind of choice was this? It felt as if an unseen force picked at her nerves, igniting a forgotten fear deep within. Just then, a soft giggle echoed through the empty restroom, sending shivers through her. Who else could be here? Her heart thumped loudly in her chest, and doubt warred with her growing curiosity. Pushing her fears aside, she reached for the red roll, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface. The moment she touched it, a wave of cold swept through the room, a shiver that ran deep beneath her skin, freezing her bones. The air thickened, swirling with tension, and a dark shape flickered at the corner of her eye. Lily's heart raced faster. There was something about this place that felt like a trap, and she suddenly wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by coming here. In that moment, the lights flickered ominously, and she turned back toward the door, expecting to see one of her friends teasing her for being overly curious. But the only thing she found was a shadowy corridor leading into darkness. It was eerily quiet, amplifying the sound of her own heartbeat. Everything within her screamed to leave, but her feet felt glued to the floor, caught in a web of fear and intrigue. With trembling hands, she unrolled some of the red paper, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the damp material. To her horror, she found that it was soaked with a thick, dark crimson liquid that dripped slightly onto the floor. Her stomach lurched as she stumbled back, the pull of something sinister tightening around her, holding her in a state of paralyzed terror. Suddenly, a sound shattered the silence, guttural breathing, echoing ominously off the cold tiles. A wave of nausea washed over her, it felt as if the world had tilted on its axis. The laughter she had heard earlier grew louder, ringing in her ears like a sinister warning bell, urging her to flee. And in that surreal moment, the mystery behind the haunting began to unfold like a dreadful scroll. The story was as old as the school itself, a cruel prank turned tragedy, transforming into a tale that now wove into the very fabric of the building. The ghost of a girl, dressed in a tattered red cloak, flitted through the halls, always watching, always waiting. She offered choices, tantalizing and terrifying, twisting fates into knotted threads of despair. Lily's heart raced as she understood the weight of her choice. This wasn't just about her, it was about all those who had dared to enter this cursed stall before her. Just as panic began to bubble up inside of her, a sudden cramp tugged at her stomach, sending her staggering toward the toilet. But the shadow was waiting, whispering dark promises laced with fear and temptation. Choose the red, it seemed to echo in her mind, ignore the warning, go with the blue, but whatever you choose, remember, it doesn't change the outcome. With no way out, a grotesque thought settled in her mind like a storm cloud. Had anyone ever come out of this bathroom unchanged? The question lingered, swirling like the shadows around her. With everything amplifying her fear, the air felt heavy. She could almost hear the voices of all who had come before, their laughter now twisted into haunting echoes of despair. As she stood there, paralyzed by dread, memories of her new school flooded her mind. The friendly smiles of the students in her class, the thrill of new adventures, and the taste of freedom that came with discovering new friends all felt like a distant dream. But here, in the suffocating stall of doom, all these pleasant thoughts began to twist into something darker. Think, Lily, you can't stay here, a tiny voice inside her screamed. With a surge of bravery, she glanced at the flimsy toilet paper in her hand. Every sinew in her body screamed for her to back away, to run. That was what everyone else did, wasn't it? They avoided this place, the cursed restroom. Yet, there was something more that tingled at her fingertips, the thrill of choice. Stepping back, she could almost hear the weight of the air shift, as if the stall itself was urging her to commit to her decision. The smell of mildew mixed with the lingering scent of something rotten caused her to shiver. Should she take the risk? Could she possibly uncover the truth behind the haunting if she chose the right paper? The red cloak, the taunts, it felt like a game, but a haunting one. Before she could think twice, Lily steeled her resolve. If she had to choose, she would choose the red. Choose red or choose blue, she murmured to herself. With shaking hands, she reluctantly unrolled the paper further. The moment the paper unfurled, a rush of icy air burst from the depths of the stall. It felt as if time itself paused, a heavy, haunting silence loomed. Then, she heard it, whispers, soft and sinister, washing over her like waves crashing against rocks. Welcome, Lily, the voices sang in unison, a twisted harmony that sent a jolt of fear shimmering down her spine. You have entered the realm of choices, with threads of fate. You can choose, but remember, not all choices lead you home. The weight of their words pressed deep within her soul, making her feel as if the very walls of the restroom were closing in. If she did not act now, she would be another tragic tale woven into the fabric of this cursed place. Would she dare to embrace the haunt? In that moment of uncertainty, the cramping in her stomach subsided, and clarity struck like lightning. She hadn't come to this school to be afraid, she came to discover new things. Clenching her fists around the red paper, she took a deep breath and shouted, "No. I refuse to let you take my choice away." The air crackled with energy as the whispers quieted. The lights flickered again, but this time they seemed to radiate a warm glow, almost comforting. Encouraged, Lily took one bold step, then another, until she stood planted firmly before the stall door. With her heart racing in anticipation, she swung open the door and stepped back into the dimly lit restroom. And just like that, everything felt different. The shadows laid low, as if they were waiting for her next move. The laughter that once echoed around her was now replaced with a gentle stillness and inviting calm. The haunting was not just a story, it was a lesson, a reminder that every choice shaped her journey. All at once, she realized she had the power to write her own story, one not haunted by fear but colored by courage. As she approached the exit, she let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. There's a strength within each person that grows when they face their fears head-on, Lily thought. Outside the restroom, the familiar sounds of children laughing and chatting filled her ears like sweet music. For the first time since coming to the school, she felt hopeful. Whatever haunted the stall might belong to the past, but Lily was more determined than ever to move towards a bright future. With a flicker of a smile on her face, she stepped out of the restroom and into the light of a new day, free from the weight of shadows. Days slipped through Lily's fingers like grains of sand since her first encounter with the mysterious red cloak. Each day crept by slowly as she tried to shake off the horrible feelings that had taken residence in her mind. The nights were filled with a restless dread, each dark hour amplifying her fears. In the quiet moments between classes, the echoing laughter of her peers felt sharp and mocking, echoing against the walls of her heart. It was hard to concentrate when all she could think about were those haunted eyes she imagined lurking behind her, and the grotesque, grinning ghost that threatened further turmoil in her already troubled school life. The school building itself felt different now, as if the creaking floors and flickering lights were conspiring against her. Whispers flowed down the hallways like a cold breeze, twisting the already twisted tales about the haunted stall. She had learned to avoid certain corners, aware of the eyes that watched from the shadows, sending chills down her spine. The air around her grew thicker, heavy with the weight of fear and uncertainty. At lunchtime the following week, Lily found herself sitting alone at her usual table. Her friends had gathered in small knots, laughing and chatting, their carefree voices drifting around her like music she no longer remembered how to dance to. She poked at her food, the lump in her throat making it hard to swallow. Should she ask them about the ghost? The thought made her stomach churn. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. Mustering her courage, she leaned closer to a group at the next table. "Have you guys heard anything about the ghost?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the laughter. Immediately, she saw their faces change, eyes wide and surprised. The atmosphere shifted, and whispers filled the space between them. "There are stories that you can still hear cries if you listen closely," one friend said, leaning in. "And some say they know people who went in and never came back." The anxiety in the room thickened, and Lily's heart pounded with both fear and a strange sense of belonging. She wasn't alone in feeling this way. "Did you ever go in there, Lily?" another friend asked, concern wrapped around her voice like a warm blanket. "What did you see?" An uneasy silence fell over the table. Taking a deep breath, Lily replied, "I didn't stay long. I just heard things." The truth felt heavy and suffocating, like a thick fog, and sharing it felt like opening a door to a haunted room where everyone might get trapped. But even though she felt scared, her own curiosity churned like a storm within her. Perhaps it was safer to at least tell them part of what she felt. But what if telling her story only caught them in the ghost's claws too? As the days reached the weekend, the grip of her curiosity only tightened. In the quiet of her room that Saturday night, she stared at the swirling images in her mind. The stall calling to her became an obsession. She needed to understand it all, needed to confront whatever darkness lay hidden within those four walls. With each tick of the clock, her resolve hardened. She resolved to go back to the stall, alone. That evening, she chose to wear her favorite sweater, a soft, comforting garment that felt like a shield against the coldness of her fears. Her heart raced with every step she took toward the bathroom, the hallway feeling long and eerie, each shadow whispering secrets meant only for her. Upon entering, she felt icy fingers trace down her spine. The silence enveloped her as she stepped inside, the dim light flickering overhead. Approaching the stall again, her instincts urged her to stop, yet she pressed on. The door creaked open, soundlessly, revealing the sight that had captured her imagination. The crimson paper lay before her, glowing strangely in the low light, as if it held an allure all its own. Her pulse quickened. The choice loomed like a giant wave ready to crash down. What if I just touch it? She wondered fleetingly, but she felt the weight of dread pressing down, reminding her of why she feared this spectacle in the first place. She peered inside, feeling the remnants of 1,000 stories echoing around her, yet she felt a strange compulsion to reach for the paper. But should she take the red roll again, or dare to try the blue? Was the blue even safe? Each option twisted in her mind, teasing her with uncertainty and danger. With trembling fingers, her hand moved toward the red roll. The paper crumbled under her touch, sticky and disgusting, leaving her feeling like she held a rotten heart in her hand. She could almost hear the specter laughing, each snicker a painful reminder of what could lie ahead. The stall felt too alive. A sinister presence danced at the edges of her vision, brushing against her skin like a chilling breeze. "It knows me," she whispered to herself, the words tumbling into the air, gaining weight. She could almost feel the ghost prodding her, challenging her fear. "It knows what I fear." The internal battle raged. Should she fight against this shadowy force seeking to drag her into its diabolical game? Struggling against the swirling dread, she knew she had to make a choice. Panic clawed at her insides. Fear wrapped itself around her heart like a thief. Taking a deep breath, she clutched the paper roll tightly, the crinkly edges biting into her palm. "I have to choose," she thought, grappling with turmoil. But what if it's wrong? As she struggled with her decision, those taunting words echoed in her mind. Red or blue? Choose wisely. The voice carried an eerie rhythm, reverberating weirdly off the walls like a whisper forgotten by time. Every nerve inside her screamed for her to escape, but where? The shadows around her began to flicker more violently, wrapping around her, squeezing tight until she could hardly breathe. The decision loomed over her like a dark cloud, refusing to budge. Lily felt the icy touch of fear hardening her resolve. She was trapped in a game with rules yet unknown, and each passing heartbeat pressed her to act. Finally, with a surge of something fierce, she placed the red paper on the holder, nearly choking on her rising panic. Just as she wedged it into place, the chill in the air reached a freezing point, and that horrible laugh echoed again. "Choose wisely," it mocked, the sound spiraling around her. Shadows twisted and danced, creeping closer as a sense of doom settled heavily near her heart. Lily's sense of desperation intensified. She could feel the specter's hunger, an insatiable craving for fear. "If I make a choice," she thought, "what will it cost me?" The ghost promised torment with every heartbeat, dragging her deeper into its menacing world, tearing at her spirit. As Lily stood frozen between choices, the truth hardened in her heart. In this moment, she understood she had to face whatever came next. Whether it was despair or bravery, she was moving forward. Taking a resolute stance, her mind swirled with the implications of what she was doing. Whatever choice lay before her, she knew it would carve a piece of her away, consuming it until it was no more. She inhaled deeply before releasing the breath into the stillness, ready to face whatever awaited her within that dreadful, haunted stall. The choice had been made, but at what price? With the choice made, even the air around Lily grew thick, like a heavy blanket pulled tight across her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. The suffocating darkness pressed against her, as though trying to snuff out the light she managed to hold onto. Each creak of the floorboards echoed in the empty restroom, resonating deep within her ears like a beat of a death knell, sending shivers down her spine. She clutched the crumpled roll of paper tightly in her hand, feeling the rough edges dig into her palm, a constant reminder of what she had just dared to do. Clarity washed over her like cold water, and the weight of the choice she had made settled heavily on her shoulders. There would be no turning back now. The ghost would come for her, cloaked in blood-red darkness, and she could feel its presence creeping closer with every passing second. The moment stretched painfully, each ticking second felt like an eternity. As Lily took a timid step forward, her breaths became shallow, and she pulled in quick gasps of air, struggling to calm the wild rhythm of her heart. With hesitant steps, she staggered out of the stall and into the open area of the restroom. The silence that had enveloped her had changed suddenly. It formed a cocoon of noise swirling around her, as if invisible tendrils of dread were tugging at her from all directions. The air hummed with ominous energy, vibrating with a sense of foreboding. For a fleeting moment, a small part of her hoped that perhaps it wasn't too late, that she could still escape whatever wicked fate awaited her. Panic seeped into her soul like dark poison, urging her to flee, to escape this madness. Yet, as she turned to rush out, she caught sight of a figure draped in shadows, flickering at the edges of her vision. It had no discernible shape, it was just a swirling mass of red fabric pooling like blood on the cold, white floor. An unsettling vertigo struck her as dread washed over her again, unraveling her previous resolve. She could not ignore the pull of the red cloak, the way it seemed almost alive, each wave of fabric beckoning her closer. Was it truly a bloodied soul, twisted and trapped between two worlds, seeking a vessel to carry its deep sorrow? Why did you come back? The voice was haunting and sweet, like the lullabies sung at dusk when the world was at its calmest. You chose to play, little girl? The shivers that caressed her spine grew stronger at those words, wrapping around her like an icy vice as she stumbled backward, trying to regain her shaky footing. The world spun around her, the familiar restroom now an endless void of fear. Her heart raced wildly, keeping pace with the heaviness of her breath. Sweat pooled in her palms, dampening her grip on reality, making it challenging to think straight. This was not how she imagined it would feel. The chill of sheer terror had seeped deep into her bones. I didn't know what I was doing. Lily cried out, her voice slicing through the air, fractured and trembling like the shadows that danced around her. But still, the cloak continued to swirl toward her, its fabric shimmering under the flickering lights, weaving a tapestry of terror around her, threatening to engulf her whole. But you did, it laughed, a guttural sound echoing gloomily against the cold tile walls. You knew the stories, you made your choice. Now you must embrace the fate that awaits. The specter's words crawled into her mind, seeping deeper into her consciousness like a dark fog. No matter how hard she fought back, she felt there was no escape, only a surrender to the unfolding darkness. As the cloak drew nearer, the air became electric, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. It felt as if the specter's very existence ignited an unseen flame that danced dangerously close to her, casting shadows that morphed into grotesque shapes, rippling with menace. She desperately tried to retreat again, her feet stumbling backward against the cold tiles, but it was as if she was tangled in invisible threads. She was ensnared, caught in the web of fear and dread that the cloaked figure spun around her. What happens now? She stammered, her voice trembling, each word a frantic plea sent into the oppressive silence. It is your time to choose, the cloak replied, its voice an eerie whisper that resonated throughout the restroom, echoing against her fragile nerve. You will return the favor, little one. You will have to choose for someone else. Suddenly, everything clicked into place for Lily, and the oppressive darkness wrapped around her tighter. She understood the cycle, it would never end. The choice weighed heavily on her shoulders, and she realized she was now part of something that had pursued countless souls before her. Sadness unfurled within her like a dreadful flower as the realization dawned. There was only torment ahead, and she was trapped. Choose wisely, the cloak warned, a dark smile curving its unseen lips, shadowy and twisted. The red fabric billowed like a living thing, vibrant yet sorrowful, a symphony of anguish that whispered to Lily's very essence. It beckoned her closer with the allure of forgotten pain, its voice wrapping around her heart, pulling her in with an irresistible force. She found herself entranced, her eyes drawn toward the depths of darkness that promised her some kind of release, some solace from the agonizing choice she faced. But there, nestled within the folds of the cloak, lurked something ominous. Something that promised her fear would multiply with every choice born from despair. Entrapped within a fate not of her making, just like so many before her, her heart sank deeper, feeling heavier with each breath. Despite her attempts at rebellion, she was simply another player in the game, another life lost to the sinister creature lingering within the bathroom walls. Your pain nourishes me, the specter cooed, each word wrapping around her like barbed vines ready to pull her deeper into the darkness. To keep my existence alive, you must choose for another, and their grief will only serve to enrich my embrace. Lily felt chills creep along her spine, causing goosebumps to erupt all over her skin. It felt unreal and terrifying, yet she was locked in place. The faces of her friends flashed through her mind, their laughter echoing in her memory, their bright smiles bursting with life. She clutched the crumpled roll of paper tightly, her only link to the world beyond this horrifying place. The words burned in her mind, a choice for another, asterisk. Why do I have to choose for someone else? She gasped, desperation creeping into her voice. I didn't want any of this. Her voice broke, vulnerability slipping through her facade of bravery. The cloak swirled, crimson fabric shimmering like a cursed jewel, as the spirit paused, its presence hovering close. Do you not see, little one? Choices are the threads woven into the fabric of our lives. It is what binds us, and in this place, choices weave powerful connections. When you choose, you create a ripple, a wave that will touch another soul, altering their fate forever. Lily's mind raced as she considered the implications of this. It was not just her fate at stake. With her decision, she could affect the lives of others, potentially leading them to a future woven in sorrow. Her heart ached at the thought of someone else enduring the same torment. She envisioned her best friend Emma, always so cheerful, whose laughter filled every corner of her heart. She could never bear the thought of Emma trapped in this nightmare. What if I don't choose? Lily whispered, fear clawing at her throat. What then? The cloak seemed to lean in closer, and the temperature dropped even further. She could see her breath clouding the air like a ghost of its own. Not choosing is still a choice, and in this realm, it would bring far worse consequences. Do you wish to bear that guilt, knowing you could have saved another from suffering? A shiver ran down her spine, and she felt torn. Every instinct told her to run, to escape this terrible predicament. But there was a deeper part of her, a flickering light of courage, urging her to stand firm. Lily took a deep breath, her mind swirling with images of friends, family, and happy times shared. She thought about her loved ones and the light they brought to her life. I won't let you claim them, she whispered fiercely, trembling from the intensity of her conviction. Ah, but little girl, choices often come with pain. The cloak's voice dripped with a sinister sweetness. You must embrace that pain to make a choice that may save another. Lily felt the encroaching shadows pressing in, the air heavy with inevitable doom. The very essence of the cloak began to pulse with energy, as if it delighted in her turmoil. Make your choice, or I shall choose for you, it taunted. And in that moment, a wild thought surged within her. The tales she'd heard, stories about courage and sacrifice, about how hope could shine even in the darkest of places, began to bloom in her mind like fragile flowers breaking through hardened ground. Perhaps she could use her choice not to indulge in darkness but to light a spark of hope instead. I won't let you win, she shouted, her voice ringing through the suffocating air with newfound strength. She began to gather her courage, summoning every ounce of willpower she could muster. I will choose to protect others. I choose hope. And as those words left her lips, she felt a shift in the very atmosphere around her. The cloak recoiled, its once vibrant color dimming, writhing in response to her declaration. The shadows around her began to tremble, as if acknowledging the power of her resolve. With fierce determination, she closed her eyes and began to visualize her friends, their laughter, joy, and persistence radiating light in her mind. I choose to protect Emma, she whispered, and to protect everyone I care about. I refuse to let them fall into your grasp. In that moment, the air erupted in a cacophony of sound, crackling, splintering, and crashing, like thunder rolling through a storm. The shadows that had coiled around her began to flee, retreating like frightened animals into the corners of the restroom. No, the cloak shrieked, its voice resonating with desperation, morphing and twisting as it began to dissolve, the once vibrant fabric fading into a deep black, disappearing from view. You cannot defy the fate that binds us. You will regret this choice. As the last remnants of the cloak vanished before her, a sudden warmth enveloped Lily, wrapping around her like a cozy blanket, erasing the lingering chill that had once gripped her so tightly. The restroom felt lighter, brighter, as if the darkness had been banished from within its walls. Though she didn't know how, she felt empowered, knowing she had stood her ground against the specter that had intended to seize her soul. Exhilarated but exhausted, Lily stepped out of the restroom, leaving the darkness behind her. She could still hear distant echoes of the whispers fading away, but there was a newfound clarity in her heart, one that was filled with courage and conviction. She had faced the cloak's embrace and had chosen hope over despair. As she walked down the hallway, sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the path ahead. With each step, she felt stronger, as if she carried the strength of 1,000 fallen souls who had once receded into the shadows. Perhaps, in the end, her choice would ripple outward, spreading light and warmth to those left behind, spark igniting spark. And even if the specter's voice lingered in her mind, she knew she would face whatever came next with renewed spirit. She was no longer just a player in the game, she was a beacon of light, ready to shine against the cloak's relentless darkness. The adventure had only just begun. Time twisted within the cramped bathroom like a rubber band stretched too far. Every second felt like it was stretching into forever, making Lily feel as if she was caught in a strange, slow-motion nightmare. The world around her dimmed, shadows creeping in and swallowing everything in sight. Her heart thundered in her chest, feeling like it was gnawing at her like a hungry tiger. The small stall, which had once just been a simple room for doing her business, transformed into a horrifying chamber of terror, a horrible place where lost souls echoed regrets and pain. Panic surged through her like an icy wave, crashing over her as she understood the depth of her terrible situation. This was not just about her anymore. It was about all the countless others that the dark specter had trapped before her. Lily closed her eyes tightly, wishing with all her might that this was just a nightmare, a bad dream she would wake up from at any moment. But the creeping darkness pressed against her, heavy and suffocating, mocking her desperate thoughts of escape. It was as if the shadows were laughing at her, reminding her that this wasn't just a waking dream. She had to escape this nightmare, but she couldn't comprehend where to go. Each breath became labored and painful, stuck in her throat like a giant rock. The sickening realization dawned on her that she was trapped in a loop, a cruel cycle with no chance of salvation or redemption. The stall was no longer just a place. It had become a cold tomb, closing in on her, enveloping her in its rancid embrace. "Pick someone," rasped the voice of the menacing figure draped in a bloody cloak, its tone hissing like the wind through the trees on a stormy night. The delight in its voice sent shivers down her spine as it spoke, a sound filled with darker intentions. "Someone who deserves to suffer in your place." The words dripped with evil, and a dark thrill seemed to pulse through the air, this wicked suggestion echoing deep within her mind like a sinister melody repeating over and over. The decisions before her, looming like shadows on the edge of dawn, felt heavier than mountains, suffocating her spirit as she was swept up in the overwhelming torrent of pressure. It was like a massive wave crashing down. She was caught in a storm that demanded sacrifice, as if the ever-expanding void threatened to swallow her whole. With each heartbeat, a terrible despair blossomed within her, as if it were a poisonous flower growing in the pit of her stomach. The choice that lay ahead was growing harder and harder to ignore. She realized the horrible truth. Any choice she made would not just seal her fate but also reach out to ensnare someone else's life. It was an evil cycle, an unholy rhythm that would allow the red cloak to wind its way through the lives of others once again, spinning its unseen web of anguish and despair like an awful spider. "Choose now," it urged, its voice smooth yet threatening, like dark liquid seeping into her mind. "Embrace the darkness. The cycle must continue." Lily felt pain blossom within her, a sharp ache that throbbed not just for herself but also at the thought of another innocent person becoming ensnared in this whirlwind of suffering. Somewhere deep inside, something cracked, as if a tiny glimmer of hope had been buried beneath layers of fear and hopelessness. The faces of her friends swirled in her mind, each one loved, each one grounding her in reality. Now they were tricked by the veil of terror draped over her heart. The beautiful rays of light in her life seemed to flicker like weak flames in a windstorm, and the warmth she once felt started to drain away like water slipping through her fingers. Suddenly, a memory pulled at her heart. It was of Sarah, a classmate who often had tears in her eyes, hidden behind the laughter of others who taunted her, a girl who sat alone during lunch, overlooked and ridiculed. Would she be the one to bear the burden of Lily's choice, wrapped in the dark, foreboding cloak and tossed into a vast abyss of despair? The thought made her stomach churn like she had eaten something rotten. But she knew that allowing a choice to be made meant passing on the evil grasping at her heart, demanding a toll, someone to suffer in her place. Yet another collision of thoughts entered her mind, making her chest feel tight. Was Sarah not deserving of light, hope, freedom, and a life without dread? Her mind teetered on the edge of horror as she wrestled with time, like an animated clock spinning out of control. The malevolent specter loomed ominously at her side, feeding on the dwindling slivers of hope that clung to her spirit like the last rays of failing daylight. It whispered dark promises, luring her closer and closer to the brink of despair. "Choose," it insisted, its gravelly laughter resonating through the air like a dreadful storm rumbling in the distance. "Choose for another, and your suffering will cease." It was as if the cloak hovered just beyond her, waiting for her to make that fateful choice. But with that shocking realization, something deeper stirred within her. A shard of resilience flickered to life, burning against the darkness that threatened to overtake her. Desperation clawed at her like a bear trapped in a net, but alongside it was her fierce will to resist this cruel fate. Yet, she was still left grappling with an unbearable question. Could she truly bear the weight of another soul's suffering? "No," she shouted, the word echoing painfully against the cold tiled walls of her prison. But only laughter came back, a laugh that sounded like the cackle of madness itself, tightening its grip on her spirit as if it were a vice. "You've already chosen, little girl. The time for indecision has passed," it crooned, and Lily felt the cloak slide closer, its cold fingers brushing against her skin like ice, trying to seize her will and spirit. Horror washed over her like a wave, pulling her under as she felt herself slipping away, dragged beneath the layers of dread and despair. "Please, let me go," she screamed, but the words fell flat, dissipating into the heavy air, swallowed by the dark shadows that crept closer. The crushing weight of despair bore down upon her like the heaviest of boulders, isolating her from the world outside the stall. All hope seemed lost as the specter pulled back, revealing the magnitude of her fate, forcing her to see that no true escape awaited her in the world beyond. Only moments of lost hope and regret. Another laugh, loud and booming like rolling thunder, emerged from the depths of darkness. Her chest tightened as she finally understood what lay ahead. She was ensnared. Even as the specter urged her onward, Lily came to face a terrible truth. There was no way out from the Red Cloak's grasp. She had entered its ghastly world willingly, and this decision would shape her destiny for as long as eternity existed. "Forever bound," it whispered, a glee radiating from the dark voice that echoed off the stall walls like a chilling greeting. "Embrace your fate." With one last scream, full of fear and fury, the fragile tether to her world unraveled. The darkness engulfed her completely, pulling her into a vast void, erasing the very essence of who she was. The bathroom faded away around her, leaving nothing but a lingering echo of her despair in the haunted chamber, never to let her go. No one ever left the same again. It was a fate sealed by the whispers of darkness and bound by the veils of sacrifice. In the shadowy abyss she had fallen into, the shadows danced menacingly, whispering secrets of those trapped before her. All the souls lost and alone, forever entwined in the web woven by the cloak. They became a chorus of sorrowful notes, echoes of the past intertwining with her present, each one a reminder of the choices that led them to eternal captivity. As the darkness tightened around her, Lily felt her resolve flicker like a steely candle in a storm, caught between fear and fight. She closed her eyes once more, determined not to surrender completely to despair. There had to be a way to break the cycle, to light a path through this consuming darkness, to stand up against the cruel voice that demanded a sacrifice. In the suffocating silence that followed, a quiet, desperate thought emerged. She would not let the Red Cloak consume her spirit. She would fight with everything she had left. The shadows whispered around her, and she vowed to find a way. She would not step into the darkness without a battle. And so, within this malevolent realm, amid the echoes of lost souls, a spark remained. In the deepest shadows, Lily steeled her heart, vowing to resist the whispers of fate that sought to claim her. She would seek the light, even in a world drenched in darkness.